You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, we've got some major news out of Fulton County, Georgia, with regard to the potential of a plea deal for Donald Trump and his top lieutenants. Can you explain what happened here?
Yeah, frankly, Brian, this story warms this old prosecutor's heart because it looks like Fani Willis knows just how strong her case is against Donald Trump and his top lieutenants, and she is determined to force them to go to trial. So when I saw the reporting that there would be no plea offers for basically the mob boss, Donald Trump, for his underboss, Mark Meadows, and for his consigliere, Rudy Giuliani, I did a little happy dance as a former prosecutor because that is precisely how I think the American people need to see this RICO case proceed. They need to see Donald Trump and Rudy and Meadows held accountable to, as we say, the full extent of the law. And that means prison time.
Now, what do you think the likelihood is that we'll see cooperation between the Fulton County prosecutors and the rest of the co-defendants, aside, of course, from Trump, Meadows, and Giuliani?
I think the likelihood is high. So thus far, of the 19 charged co-defendants, only 4 have pleaded guilty. That feels a little low. Now, 3 of the 4 are really important players because many of them can bring to bear sharply incriminating evidence against Donald Trump, against Rudy Giuliani, and against Mark Meadows. People like Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesbro and Jenna Ellis. But, buried way down in the article in today's reporting in The Guardian, there was a reference to some information that leads me to conclude that there very well may be some more cooperating witnesses, some more flippers developed very soon. And it's this paragraph in the article. The prosecutors on the Trump case appear convinced that they're close to gaining more cooperating witnesses because in recent weeks, prosecutors privately advised the judge, that would be Judge McAfee, to delay setting a trial date because some co-defendants may soon plead out. And, that is not attributed to anyone. Nobody is on the record by name at this point. But what I can tell you, Brian, is when prosecutors approach a judge and say, Judge, can you hold off for a minute? Because we reasonably believe we're going to develop some more cooperating witnesses. That is a sure sign that the prosecutors are confident that more people will be flipping soon.
Now, is it unusual to you that Fani Willis wouldn't seek to strike any type of agreement with Trump, or is this just altogether expected?
So, in the run-of-the-mill case, it's a little surprising, right? A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. A good plea disposition, somebody who pleads guilty, takes responsibility for their crimes, and gets some kind of a benefit in exchange for their agreement to plead guilty is generally a good thing. It doesn't surprise me that Fani Willis is taking the principled position that if you're a high government official, including a former president of the United States, and you try to steal an election from the American people, there will be no plea offer. There will be no reduced charge. There will be no sentencing cap or limitation. There will be no benefits. The only thing you're going to get is a trial. And then when you're convicted, you're going to get, the maximum sentence allowed by law. I think that is precisely what these crimes call for.
Now, Glenn, in these kinds of prosecutions, insofar as there have been these kinds of prosecutions before, would prosecutors typically strike deals with large scale defendants? Or when you've got big fish like Trump, are they always looking to take them down?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So in the largest RICO case that I prosecuted, we indicted more than 24 defendants, all but 13 pleaded guilty. And we went to trial. We actually went to 3 trials against the 13 co-defendants. And we did not make plea offers to the leaders of the criminal organization, the criminal enterprise. We just decided that these were people who needed to be held accountable for all of their crimes. And basically, they needed to spend the rest of their life in prison. And we as prosecutors needed to do everything we could to try to get to that result, hold them accountable for what they did, and protect the community from them in the future. So it's not unusual in the really big, sort of sophisticated, complex RICO prosecutions that the prosecutors will extend no plea offer. Now, the only way a defendant, one of the top dogs, can resolve their case short of trial if there's no plea offer extended is they can plead straight up to the indictment. What does that mean? And I've had this happen. They walk into court and they plead guilty to every single count in the indictment, no lesser charges, and no sentencing concessions or agreements. And then they're kind of at the mercy of the judge. And the only benefit that they will get from that is there's a provision in the law for acceptance of responsibility. If somebody walks into court and pleads guilty, accepts responsibility for their crimes, there is generally by rule or by statute a reduction in their sentence that the judge can give them if the judge decides they should receive an acceptance of responsibility reduction. But in a case like this, it would be kind of a pittance. And Donald Trump and company, if they were to plead guilty straight up to the indictment, would almost be guaranteed to spend the rest of their lives in prison.
Yeah, I also don't foresee that happening given everything that the Trump team has come forward and said in public. I mean, they've kind of dug in their heels on this idea that Donald Trump is completely innocent. So the notion that they would walk into court and then plead guilty to everything just kind of defies logic here. Glenn, on the August 5th proposed trial date, is the reason that they proposed that trial date for Donald Trump, even amid, the 16 remaining co-defendants, is that because they kind of expect that the other co-defendants, that it'll be a little bit rocky in terms of who has or hasn't negotiated some type of cooperation agreements, but knowing that Donald Trump won't have that opportunity, is that why they felt confident proposing a trial date for Trump next in this trial?
I think Fani Willis made a calculation that maybe the next best time to go to trial. Remember, there was a trial date set for Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro,
Yeah.
but they managed to do away with that trial date when they pleaded guilty and flipped on Trump and the remaining co-defendants. I think Fani Willis probably made an assessment that her prosecution team can be ready to go to trial as early as August 5th. So she proposed that to Judge McAfee. Now, he hasn't set that trial date yet, but I have a feeling the prosecutors know that more guilty pleas are going to roll in. More people are going to flip against Donald Trump because the reporting is that they have extended or discussed plea offers with all of the other defendants. And as we just saw in the reporting, they even signaled to the judge that they're anticipating some more guilty pleas. So I think Fani Willis's calculation is she's probably going to call out a number of other co-defendants who will plead guilty and agree to cooperate. And whatever the batch of co-defendants that's left, the people who are insisting on a trial, will be a manageable number, and she could be ready to go to trial against them in August.
And just on that point real quick, do you think that she'll bring Trump to trial alone when if she gets granted this August 5th trial date, or do you think that he would be batched with other co-defendants?
I think it's very unlikely Fani Willis would want to do an entire RICO case against one defendant, even if that one defendant was Donald Trump. I have a feeling if she has to break it up into multiple trials, she'll probably batch Trump together with Meadows and Rudy Giuliani and maybe a couple of the other higher level defendants, and then maybe leave a second RICO trial for the fake electors who, in the grand scheme of things, are of much less concern to the kind of health of our democracy than are the high federal government officials who try to overturn the results of the election. But all of this is kind of looking into a crystal ball. But the one thing I'm pretty confident of, because any RICO trial that is conducted will of necessity involve presenting all of the evidence of all of the crimes, because when you're a member of a conspiracy, you are criminally responsible not only for the crimes that you committed, but the crimes that all of your co-conspirators committed. So that means that Fani Willis's prosecutors will prove up the entire RICO case, and it's just not that convenient to do it against one defendant. So I think she'll probably batch maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 defendants together for that August 5th trial date.
And by the way, that could be best case scenario, because I remember when we were discussing this issue in early fall here, we were expecting that we would have that speedy trial in October, and then maybe even another trial before we eventually saw Donald Trump take the stand, it may come to pass that the first trial in this Fulton County case, where the prosecutors are able to hold all of their cards until then, will be Donald Trump. So that's possible good news on the horizon. Glenn, let's end off with this. Why do you think that this information contained within this article, this exclusive reporting from The Guardian, got out? Like, do you think it was a strategy at all to leak this by the prosecutor's office, maybe as a signal to the other co-defendants that Trump is going down and they can either stick with him or jump ship and save themselves?
Okay, Brian, let me reveal my bias as a former career prosecutor. I like to think that prosecutors are not in the habit of leaking important evidence or information to the press or putting it out there in the public square improperly. But here is what I have experienced. When you are negotiating or discussing possible pleas with the defense attorneys, the defense teams that represent a dozen or more co-defendants, they are not bound by any rules of secrecy when it comes to these plea negotiations or these discussions. And, attorneys tend to talk. I have seen defense attorneys talking to their friends and fellow defense attorneys about, these decisions and whether they should accept the plea offer or not. And the word gets out into the public square. I am not accusing any defense attorneys or defense teams as having leaked this information. I will tell you, in my experience, that is the more likely way information leaks out than it leaking out of the prosecutor's offices. But listen, prosecutors sometimes leak stuff too. I'd like to think we don't do it all that often, but it does happen. This one, I can't say how it leaked out.
Well, building on that previous question, do you think that this could end up ultimately hurting Donald Trump, because it does show those remaining co-defendants who haven't negotiated any plea deals with prosecutors thus far that the prosecutor's office is seeing this thing through to the end and they have every intention of taking Donald Trump down? So again, they can either stick with him or save themselves.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. Pressure bursts pipes. And right now, what do those remaining co-defendants know? They know that there will be no plea offers extended to Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and Mark Meadows. And as you observed a few minutes ago, these people are not going to walk into court and take responsibility for their crimes and plead straight up. I have had defendants do it, but these three men are unlikely to do that. So what does that signal to the remaining co-defendants? Oh, there will be a RICO trial held, and you can either be on the bus or you can be in front of the bus and get run over. And I have to believe, particularly some of the lesser players, are going to want to get on the prosecution's bus. They're going to want to strike the best deal they can while there is still an opportunity to strike a deal, because at some point, DA Willis will set a drop dead date. She will say, as of this date, we will entertain no plea offers, no counter offers. You will be going to trial, and you may very well be batched with Donald Trump, Mark Meadows, and Rudy Giuliani. So I'll tell you, I will bet my $1, that's my betting limit, on more defendants pleading guilty, cooperating, and flipping in the near future.
All right. And to your exact point, she has proposed that date of June 21st, 2024. So it's going to come quicker than we think right now. So with that said, we'll obviously stay on top of this case as we have any news. If those of you watching want to follow along, make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.